It is 3:14 hours local time. The South China Sea fades into the Taiwan Strait, and the water here is the color of deep iron, black, cold, and utterly indifferent to the ambitions of nations. A half moon hangs low on the western horizon, its reflection fractured by the wake of a ship that was never meant to be ignored. USS Ronald Reagan, CVN-76, is transiting northward through the strait at 18 knots. Her flight deck is dark. No aircraft are on the CATs. No visible activity. To an untrained eye, she might look dormant, a city of steel drifting through the night. But that perception is precisely what her crew wants the world to believe. Because beneath that stillness, inside the hardened, electromagnetic shielded spaces of her Combat Information Center, 37 sailors are wide awake, and they have been watching what is coming for the last 2 hours and 14 minutes. The contact first appeared on the AN/SPY 1DV radar at 00:59 hours. A single surface track bearing 275, range approximately 91 nautical miles. The signature was consistent with a Type 055 destroyer, the Renhai class, China's most advanced surface combatant, displacing over 12,000 tons, armed with 112 vertical launch cells, and carrying the most sophisticated active phased array radar in the People's Liberation Army Navy. The contact was designated Master 1. Then, 12 minutes later, a second contact appeared, slightly to the south and closing faster. Master 2. A Type 052D, smaller, faster, and equally aggressive in posture. At 0131, a third contact materialized from the northeast, a Type 054A frigate, maneuvering to cut across the carrier's projected track. 3 ships, 3 vectors, 1 geometry. It was not a coincidence, and no one in the CIC pretended otherwise. The Tactical Action Officer, a lieutenant commander with 9 years in surface warfare, leaned over the Aegis display and studied the projected tracks in silence. The firing arcs, the closing speeds, the calculated closest point of approach for each contact. It was all there, rendered in pale green light across the tactical picture. She did not raise her voice. She never raised her voice. She simply said, "Get me the strike group commander." Rear Admiral, embarked aboard Reagan, was in his at-sea cabin reviewing the morning intelligence brief when the call came. He dressed in 90 seconds and was in the CIC in 4 minutes. He looked at the tactical display. He looked at it for a long time. Then he asked one question. "What's the CPA on Master 1? The answer came back. "Estimated CPA, sir. 4.2 nautical miles, bearing 085 in approximately 47 minutes at current closing rates. 4 nautical miles. In the Taiwan Strait, where international waters narrow to a corridor of approximately 70 miles at its widest, 4 miles was not a gap. It was a statement. The plan was not planning a transit. They were planning a box. The concept was not new. In the gray zone of modern maritime competition, the People's Liberation Army Navy had refined the art of the non-kinetic confrontation into something approaching doctrine. You don't need to fire a missile to score a strategic win. You just need to force a supercarrier to alter course, to blink, to yield. Because the moment USS Ronald Reagan turns away from a confrontation in international waters, the footage, and there would be footage, because the plan always has footage, gets broadcast on every state media channel from Beijing to Shanghai. The headline writes itself. American carrier retreats from Chinese waters. The propaganda value of that image outweighs the cost of deploying 3 warships by an order of magnitude. That was the adversary's gamble. They were not here to start a war. They were here to win a news cycle. And in the gray zone, that can sometimes matter more. The strike group commander understood this completely. He also understood what his response would be before he even sat down. Maintain course, maintain speed, he said. Get me a status on the air wing. Within minutes, the plan was in motion. On the flight deck above, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters were being prepped on the aft elevator. The Seahawk is not a combat aircraft in the traditional sense. It carries torpedoes and sonobuoys. Yes, and its crew can call in fires from the strike group if necessary. But on this night, it would serve a different function entirely. It would be the eyes of the formation, airborne and unambiguous. A declaration, without words, that the United States Navy was watching and recording everything. In the meantime, USS Antietam, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser sailing 8 nautical miles to Reagan's port bow, received new maneuvering orders. She began a slow, deliberate turn to the southwest. Not aggressive, not provocative, but geometrically precise. Her new track would place her directly between Master 1 and the carrier. This was the soft block, a maneuver designed to complicate the adversary's geometry without giving them a pretext for escalation. You cannot claim harassment when a warship simply adjusts its position in international waters. But you also cannot ignore a 12,000-ton cruiser that has just inserted itself between you and your target. Aboard Antietam, the bridge team executed the maneuver in silence. The officer of the deck watched the tactical display. The helmsman held the new course. No one commented on what was happening. Everyone knew what was happening. At 0341, the first Seahawk lifted off Reagan's deck and climbed into the night sky. Within 90 seconds, it was 700 feet above the waterline. Its AN/APS-153 multi-mode radar spinning up. Its FLIR turret slewing toward Master 1. The helicopter's crew, a pilot, a co-pilot, and a sensor operator, spoke in calm, clipped sentences. They had a job. They were doing their job. The sensor operator locked the FLIR on the Type 055's bridge. In the thermal image, the destroyer was bright with heat. Her propulsion plant running hard, deck crew visible as white silhouettes moving along her rails. She was close enough now that the optical system could resolve individual shapes. The sensor operator noted this without emotion and logged the timestamp. Then the plan ship did something unexpected. Master 1 altered course to the east, increasing speed to 28 knots, attempting to cross ahead of Antietam before the cruiser could complete her soft block. It was a bold move, fast, aggressive, and technically legal. But it also meant the Type 055 was now on a closing geometry with the cruiser at a combined rate of over 40 knots. In the CIC aboard Antietam, the tactical action officer watched the new track appear on her display. CPA had just dropped to under 2 nautical miles. She immediately got the strike group commander on the net. Romeo Mike Alpha, this is Antietam Actual. Master 1 has accelerated, altered course east. New CPA estimate is 1.8 miles in 11 minutes. Request guidance. The strike group commander's voice was level. "Antietam, you have authority to maintain your current track. Do not yield. Do not accelerate. Acknowledge." Acknowledged. Antietam holds course. This was the moment the psychology of the encounter shifted, because the plan commander aboard Master 1 now faced a calculation he had not anticipated when he began this maneuver. His ship was converging on a U.S. cold cruiser that had no intention of moving. The rules of the road at sea, COLREGS, assign specific responsibilities in crossing situations. But COLREGS also require both vessels to take action to avoid a collision when one is imminent. The question was, who would blink first? The Seahawk settled into a hover 400 feet above and 800 meters off Master 1's port beam. Its searchlight was off. Its transponder was squawking, clearly identified. And at a signal from the sensor operator, a brief, single pulse from the aircraft's non-lethal laser designator swept across the Type 055's bridge windows. A green flash, there and gone in a fraction of a second. Not a weapon, not a threat under international law, but an unmistakable signal. We see you. We have always seen you. And we are not moving. 9 minutes. 8 minutes. The geometry tightened. In the CIC aboard Reagan, the Admiral watched the tracks converge on the display. Around him, his staff worked quietly. An intelligence officer was tracking 2 additional plan vessels that had just appeared on radar, farther back, possibly holding at the edge of plan territorial waters. Observation assets. Witnesses. This was definitely being filmed from multiple angles. 7 minutes. The Type 055 made her move. Master 1 began a slow, deliberate turn to the south. Not fast, not sudden. Gradual enough to maintain dignity, but real enough to change the geometry. The CPA recalculated in real time on the Antietam's display. 2 miles, then 3, then 4. The closing rate dropped. The tactical picture relaxed at millimeter by millimeter. But Master 2 had not moved. The Type 052D was still on a northwest track, angling toward Reagan's starboard bow, 18 nautical miles out and closing. It was as if the plan formation had split its bet. Pull back on the most direct challenge while pressing from a different angle to see if the Americans would shift their attention. They didn't shift their attention. They didn't need to. Because USS Chancellorsville, the second Ticonderoga cruiser in the strike group, was already on a converging course with Master 2. She had been maneuvering for the last 20 minutes, quietly, without drama, positioning herself on Master 2's projected track like a piece being placed on a chessboard 3 moves in advance. The planned destroyer's crew likely knew Chancellorsville was there. But knowing someone is there and knowing what they will do are 2 different things. At 0418, the Seahawk crew reported a radio transmission from Master 1 on Channel 16, the International Distress and Calling Frequency. The transmission was in Chinese accented English. The message stated that the plan vessels were conducting routine training operations in what it characterized as Chinese historical waters and warned all vessels to maintain a safe distance. It was a standard plan script, legally meaningless, since no court of international law recognized Chinese historical claims over the Taiwan Strait's international waters. But it was being broadcast, which meant it was being recorded, and recording was the point. The response from the Reagan strike group was measured and precise. USS Antietam's bridge team transmitted a single reply, in clear English, over Channel 16. The message cited the relevant provisions of UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, confirming that the U.S. vessels were exercising the right of innocent passage through international waters, that they were complying with all applicable regulations, and that any vessel on a collision course with a U.S. Navy warship should alter course immediately in accordance with COLREGIS. The message was calm. It was factual. It was recorded. And then Antietam went silent. No argument. No escalation. Just the law, stated plainly. And then silence. Over the next 31 minutes, the tactical picture evolved in exactly the direction the strike group commander had anticipated. Master 2, faced with Chancellorsville's immovable presence on her projected track, began a gradual deceleration, then a turn to the north. Master 3, the Type 05 4A frigate, had stopped accelerating shortly after 0400 and was now maintaining a position roughly 22 miles from Reagan, tracking but not closing. And Master 1, having completed her turn to the south, was now on a diverging course, her speed reducing from 28 knots to approximately 18. The box had failed. The geometry that the plan formation had spent hours constructing, the careful positioning of 3 modern warships to present the commanding officer of USS Ronald Reagan with an impossible choice, had been dismantled without a single weapon being fired, without a single voice being raised, and without the carrier altering her course by so much as 1 degree. At 0449, the strike group commander ordered the second Seahawk to stand down. The first remained airborne, continuing its overwatch orbit, recording everything. Master 1 was now 7 miles to the south and opening. Chancellorsville settled back into her standard screening position. Antietam resumed her normal station. In the CIC aboard Reagan, the tactical action officer updated the contact log. Master 1, Master 2, Master 3, all 3 entries now carried the notation, disengaging. She logged the times, the maneuvers, the radio exchanges, the laser events. Every frame of Seahawk FLIR footage was already tagged and time-stamped for post-event analysis. The intelligence package would be transmitted to Indopacom within hours. Analysts in Hawaii would spend the next several days reconstructing the plan formation's intent, their decision trees, the precise moment each ship's commander had made the call to break off. But in the CIC, there was no celebration, no relief, barely even acknowledgement. The watch rotation continued. The radar continued to sweep. The tactical display continued to show what it always showed: a carrier strike group, sovereign and unyielding, transiting through international waters to which it had every legal right. The strike group commander returned to his at-sea cabin at 0511. He had been in the CIC for 2 hours and 20 minutes. He wrote 2 paragraphs in his operational log. The first paragraph described the events factually: times, contacts, maneuvers, outcomes. The second paragraph was shorter. It read, "Formation executed as planned. No escalation. No deviation from standing orders. Plan formation disengaged at 0449. Freedom of navigation maintained." He closed the log. He thought for a moment about what had happened. Not strategically, not analytically, but humanly. about the plan commander aboard Master 1, who had launched this maneuver with a specific objective and had watched it fail, not because he lacked courage or capability, but because the force he had engaged was simply better disciplined, more patient, more precise, less emotional, and about his own sailors, 37 of them in the CIC alone, who had spent 4 hours in controlled tension without ever losing their composure or their focus. This was the real nature of modern sea power. Not the missiles in the launch cells, though they were there. Not the strike aircraft waiting below deck, though they were ready. The real nature of it was this: the absolute certainty, broadcast through every action and non-action over 4 hours of the night, that the United States Navy would not be moved. Not by bluster, not by posturing, not by 3 modern warships arrayed across its path in the narrow waters of the Taiwan Strait. The gray zone is a place where the boundaries between war and peace are deliberately blurred, where adversaries seek advantages through actions calibrated to stay below the threshold of armed conflict. Every major naval power in the world is operating in this space, learning its geometry, testing its edges. China tests it in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, near the Senkakus. Russia tests it in the North Atlantic and the Baltic. Iran tests it in the Hormuz. And the United States Navy, which must respond to all of them, has developed something that cannot be purchased or replicated easily: institutional discipline. A culture of restraint so deeply embedded that it functions under pressure the way muscle memory functions in an athlete, automatically, reliably, without conscious effort. The plan knew this going in. They likely knew the soft block was coming. They may have anticipated the Seahawk overflight. What they were testing, what they are always testing, is not capability. It is will. And on the night of this transit, somewhere in the black water between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland, they received their answer. At 0600, USS Ronald Reagan cleared the northern exit of the Taiwan Strait and entered the Philippine Sea. The Seahawk recovered aboard at 0614. The watch changed. Coffee was made. The carrier's catapults would be ready for flight operations by dawn. Nothing happened. That was the point. Nothing was supposed to happen. And nothing did, because 37 sailors in a combat information center and a strike group commander, who chose his words as carefully as his maneuvering orders, understood something that often gets lost in the discussion of military hardware and missile counts and defense budgets. The goal of naval power projection is not to destroy your adversary. It is to make destruction unnecessary, to be so obviously, calmly, unambiguously present that the adversary calculates correctly that the cost of escalation exceeds any possible benefit and makes the rational choice to disengage. They blinked, not because they were weak, but because the alternative was unthinkable, and the force they were facing had made it unambiguously clear, with geometry and silence and discipline, that it knew exactly what it was doing. The sea closed behind the formation. The wake dissolved. The strait returned to its iron-black quiet. And somewhere on the southern horizon, 3 planned warships turned for home.